Most people think war is something fought with weapons, bombs, and battlefields. Yet some of the most destructive conflicts in history were not waged with bullets, but with money, with banknotes printed in presses, with interest rates set deliberately, with exchange rates manipulated. These are not the kinds of wars you usually read about in school textbooks. Armies do not march, but countries collapse. These are called currency wars. And once you begin to notice them, you realize this. The rise and fall of empires has often been shaped not by generals on the battlefield, but by these invisible wars. This is not just an economic issue. Currency wars decide who eats and who goes hungry. They determine who rules and who obeys. And these wars are not a thing of the past. They are still being fought today, quietly, unnoticed, yet touching every unit of money in your pocket. The logic of currency wars is actually very simple, using money as a weapon. Deliberately weakening a currency, making exports cheaper, flooding markets with abundant and cheap credit to destabilize rivals, or stockpiling critical assets like gold to corner others. On paper, these may look like smart moves. In reality, they are the chemical weapons of economic history. While poisoning your opponent, you slowly poison your own system as well. The first major modern example was the Great Depression. After the crash of 1929, the global economy spun out of control. Countries needed to sell their goods abroad to survive, but global demand had collapsed. As a solution, everyone began to devalue their own currency. Britain abandoned the gold standard in 1931. The United States devalued the dollar in 1933. France, Italy, and Japan joined the same race. Everyone tried to cheapen their currency, but this was not a way out. It was a vicious cycle economists call Beggar-Thy-Neighbor. Imports became more expensive, living standards fell, tensions escalated, and this economic war eventually paved the way for a real one. But currency wars are not unique to the 20th century. The Roman Empire experienced this 2,000 years ago. Rome's currency, the denarius, was almost pure silver, and the empire's power rested on that trust. But as wars expanded and costs rose, emperors found an easy solution: reducing the silver content of the coin. At first it was hard to notice, a bit more copper, a bit less silver. Over time, the silver content fell below 5%. This was the ancient version of the printing press. The outcome was inevitable: inflation, loss of trust, and economic collapse. Rome weakened itself from within long before the barbarians reached its gates. After the Second World War, the world tried to avoid repeating this mistake by creating the Bretton Woods system. The dollar was pegged to gold, and other currencies were fixed to the dollar. But this system gave the United States extraordinary power. Whoever controlled the dollar controlled the system. Countries that did not follow the rules were no longer disciplined with bombs, but with financial pressure. Credit was cut, trade was restricted, financial channels were tightened. It was quiet, clean, and often more effective than military intervention. But this power could not last. By the late 1960s, the United States began printing dollars without sufficient gold backing to finance the Vietnam War and rising domestic spending. Other countries noticed and lined up to convert their dollars into gold. As U.S. gold reserves began to drain, Nixon severed the link to gold in 1971. The gold window was closed. Bretton Woods collapsed. The world moved to a system of floating exchange rates, and a new era of currency wars began. In the 1980s, a particularly harsh example unfolded. Japan was rising rapidly. It was running a massive trade surplus against the United States, and this disturbed Washington. With the Plaza Accord signed in 1985, the dollar was deliberately weakened, while the yen and the German mark were strengthened. The official justification was trade balance. In reality, it was a coordinated currency attack. The yen doubled in value in a short time. Japanese exports were hit hard. An asset bubble inflated and then burst. Japan entered decades of stagnation. The United States won without firing a single shot, using currency markets like artillery. Currency wars do not look like wars in real time. They appear as interest rate decisions, central bank statements, and international summits. But their consequences are very real. Factories closing, unemployment rising, savings wiped out. When the Thai baht collapsed during the 1997 Asian financial crisis, it was not just Thailand's problem. The crisis spread to Indonesia, South Korea, and Malaysia. Millions were impoverished overnight. In a global system, one country's move can become another country's disaster. Today, we are living in what many economists call currency war 4.0. Interest rates have fallen close to zero, trillions have been printed, and sanctions have openly become weapons. Assets are frozen, countries are cut out of global payment systems. The United States and China are engaged in a quiet but intense monetary struggle. The dollar remains strong, but China is pushing the yuan forward, stockpiling gold, and building alternative payment networks. Emerging economies are trapped. Lower interest rates and capital flees. Raise them and the economy suffocates. The 2020 pandemic accelerated this process. An unprecedented amount of money was printed worldwide. At first, everything seemed fine, but in 2022, inflation exploded. When the United States raised interest rates, the dollar strengthened. This pushed many countries into debt crises. Countries like Sri Lanka stood on the brink of default. Policies that saved one country pushed others toward collapse. This is the hidden cost of currency wars. History shows us one thing clearly. Currency wars rarely end calmly. Something always breaks. A currency collapses, a new system emerges. The guilder, the pound, the dollar. Every monetary hegemony has ended painfully. Now the question is, will the dollar continue? Is a multipolar system coming? Or will digital currencies take the stage? These are not academic questions. They affect your savings, your income, your life. The most dangerous part is that most people do not even realize they are inside this war. You hear a bomb, but you feel currency depreciation at the grocery store. That is why financial awareness is vital. If you can see the patterns, you can protect yourself. You can diversify your assets and avoid relying solely on paper promises. Because money is not neutral, it is a tool of power. The winners are often not the most productive, but the most powerful. And the losers are those who realize they were part of the game when it is already too late. Debasement in Rome, devaluation in the 1930s, the Plaza Accord in the 1980s, money printing in the 2010s. The names change, but the method remains the same. So the next time you hear about an interest rate cut, a currency adjustment, or new sanctions, do not think of it as just an economic headline. It is a move in a war. And remember, if money is a weapon, the safest place is where you are not the target. If this perspective is new to you, subscribe. History holds the answers. I will show you where to look.